What's up, BookTube? I haven't done a rants video in a very long time, and I just realized, hey, this is Rants or Us Reads. I should be, ranting, living up to my name from time to time. And since ranting is the one thing that I love to do most of all, beyond anything else in this world, I thought I will do a very controversial video to start this, the first rant of the year, let's say. And it's going to be one that's probably going to ruffle some feathers. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you might disagree. You might be thinking exactly like I am. Who knows? There might be more like me than what most people would actually think. But I did start this channel so that I could speak with people who have differing viewpoints over my favorite books. And I want to speak about this one because this has been a topic that I actually feel very strongly about when it comes to Harry Potter. And that's Harry Potter would have been better without a Voldemort character. Would have been better without Voldemort. Now think about that for a second. Let that sink in. Harry Potter would have been better without Voldemort. Now, why do you ask? And how would that work? You have to, obviously, if you have a protagonist, you have to have an antagonist. Well, you could. You could. But what would actually have been more terrifying is the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic, because think about it just for a second. Voldemort gets destroyed by Harry Potter. The Ministry of Magic, they raise him up to this glorious hero-like figure. They attempt to try to use him to control the magical world as we know it. Not as this prime minister of sorts, but as like this, kid who can really help benefit and promote their propaganda. That would have been great. It also could have been great where that they could have used, put Harry Potter out there to bring down, some of Voldemort's Death Eaters that are still around. Something along those lines. But dealing with the corruption and the incompetence of the Ministry of Magic, instead of Voldemort, the big baddie, instead of being more institutionalized, would have made this a grand threat. Now, this is where I feel like, and this is me just author brain thinking here, this would have been a great way to transition into books outside of the, still inside the Harry Potter universe, but outside of necessarily Harry Potter, because you're dealing with the Ministry of Magic as the main overall villain, as the main thing that is keeping the magical world down. Because if you think about it, the magical world is in hiding. They're in hiding. So, by definition of them being in hiding of the real world, then that means that they feel like the real world, the Muggles, are somewhat enemies. So you could have phrased that or used that as the Ministry of Magic making the magical world fear regular human beings, and then vice versa, and then Harry Potter could have been the good go-between between the two. That could have really caught us off branches of the Harry Potter series into different things, because the overall aspect would be taking down the Ministry of Magic, or the consequences from the Ministry of Magic's control. Now, another, just overall, just the institutional villainy would have been so much better than this really bad wizard, that for some reason his main goal is to take over a high school. Think about that for a second. That would have been a lot cooler, wouldn't it have? At least in my opinion, that would have been a lot better. It would have also added some moral complexity, some depth to this. Granted, we're talking about, I know I'm going to hear this in the comment sections, and probably rightfully so, well, this is a kid's book. You don't need to be morally, complex with your characters. But if you think about it, Harry Potter is very morally complex. It deals with issues of race, of class, of, just of bullying, of all these different aspects of real world problems. It deals with that. Institutional problems it deals with. The evils of this world, the evils of following characters who are these, godlike characters, these characters above imagination. I feel like we needed more complexity shown more to that. We could have added on to that because it already had it in it. So that, to me, moral complexity, deepen it even further. Let's go down this rabbit hole even further. I feel like, again, that would have made a lot of great offshoots of this world, and we could have continued to live in this world, and it would have felt natural. Because let's face it, and as a Star Wars fan, I go through this all the time. Without Darth Vader, without Darth Sidious, you really don't have Star Wars. People are like, whoa. Without the Skywalkers, do we want to live in this Star Wars world? Well, maybe if you focus, like, take Harry Potter, for instance. If you take away that main villain and you make it more institutionalized, you can continue this world on. And it would feel it'd feel more natural, I guess you could say. And another one is the Death Eaters. The Death Eaters would have been really cool if it would have been more of, they are kind of, I don't know, the off branch, the rebels against the Ministry of Magic. They could be the ones fighting against it. It could be a pull between the dark side versus the light side, which is never good in either way that Harry Potter went. And he had to kind of walk that middle road. That would have been a really cool way to have included the Death Eaters. Because let's face it, the Death Eaters, as fun as what they were really just people that were scared of Voldemort. Yes, there was some that were really, into the pure blood like stuff that was in the book. But overall, most of them was just really, really scared. Another thing is the story stops being a destiny-driven narrative with Harry Potter, and it starts becoming a choice-driven. Now, I think all of us as fantasy, readers, I think we kind of get a little tired sometimes of the destiny, the chosen one kind of moments. We want somebody who's driven by choice. We want somebody who we feel like can be hurt in the end. That's the reason why A Song of Ice and Fire is such a big thing with fans, series with fans, because you don't know if your favorite characters are going to live or die. They could, because while there is some chosen ones, we don't know exactly who it is in it. So overall, that would have added some depth to this. It would have added some intrigue to it. It would have made, like I said, I think that would have made the Death Eaters so much more interesting. That would have made the world around it so interesting. That would have made Harry Potter and his friends so much more interesting if everything was character-driven, not destiny-driven in a lot of ways. And you know what? It would have made made Snape and Dumbledore and all of these other people not felt like really just chess pieces on the board. It would have been the destiny side would have been away, and it would be in these characters, behaving on their own, choosing what they feel to be driven by. You take somebody like Dumbledore. Dumbledore, in his youth, was a very dangerous person. And by his own way of thinking, he wasn't a fan of Muggles. And you could have had that more back and forth between him, of where that his natural instinct is go this way, but then his conscience tells him to pull back. And, it could have been where that, he could have been got close to power, just having to be pulled back away from it. That would have been really, really fun. And another thing is you could have explored the Slytherin and the pure blood culture without it collapsing into this I don't know, this racism narrative that could have gone in, which you could have even have added that, and it still would have made it a little bit more, like I said, I've said this word a million times already, complex. It could have really bought into it. Because if there's one thing that did actually kind of bother me towards the end of the Harry Potter series is Slytherin just made you wonder why there was a house Slytherin in the first place. Like, why would you teach magic to people who are naturally going to be bad? Like, it turned into this good versus evil mentality, and you were one or the other. There wasn't a complexity, and people say, well, what about Snape? Snape, he was kind of a hero. Well, not really. If you think about it, Snape only was a good guy because he was in love with Harry Potter's mom. That's it. He wasn't a good guy because he was naturally a good guy. His feelings on anything didn't change. It was just simple fact of he loved her, and that was it. And to a certain extent, he did take up for Harry Potter on that. But overall, I just feel like the climax of the story would have just been so much better. You would have had Harry Potter versus the magical world instead of it being Harry Potter versus, the big bad in Voldemort. That would have been, to me, absolutely amazing story. I would have loved to have seen that. I just kind of feel like Harry Potter from books 4 through on was just about Voldemort. And it was less about Harry Potter. It was about Voldemort choosing Harry Potter's path and less about, let's say, the fun and the intrigue of the magical world and less about Harry Potter's choices. And those were the two things that actually was the most fun about the Harry Potter world, at least for me. Now, let me know, guys, if y'all disagree with any of these points. Like I said, I know I'm going to get a lot of heat from this because I get a lot of heat when I bring it up with any Harry Potter fan, is they feel like, oh, that's the craziest thing in the world. You can't have Harry Potter without Voldemort. Yes, you can, because in my personal opinion, and this is another controversial aspect, books 1 through 3 was so much better than books 4 through on. That's just my personal opinion. Let me know in the comments down below what y'all think. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching my rant, and y'all take care.